You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, a place to learn about how to grow your business and stay ahead of technological advances before they become mainstream. This episode is sponsored by Ingram Micro's Xvantage, the next level way to transform your business's potential and reshape how customers see you through advanced transactional data. Let's get into it. Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Shelby Skrhak, and our guest today is Jason Proctor, Advisory System Engineer for the Global Technology Office at Dell. Jason, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, today we are talking about cyber resilience and improving the security posture for federal and public sector agencies. But I guess first of all, just tell us about your role there at Dell.
So in my role as a advisory systems engineer out of the Global Technologies Office for Data Protection, I primarily work with our customers, advise them on strategies around not only data protection, but delve into zero trust and trusted infrastructure. I also work with our partners and our distribution partners especially to keep them up to date on what Dell is doing, what Dell brings to the table, our best practices, our thought leadership.
Well, yeah. And so, to talk about some of those best practices, let's understand some key terms and also some key differentiators. So when we talk about cyber resilience, I wonder if we can go into a little bit of an overview then. So, cyber resilience can be a pretty broad term and that can encompass a lot of things. So I wonder if you can give us a little bit of an overview of when we're sitting down with you and we're saying, okay, how do we improve our security posture? What are those things that you're going over?
So a lot of the things that I go over, it starts with the simple concept that cyber resilience is not just one thing. There isn't a single solution out there that's going to magically solve this problem for you. If it was that easy, we would have probably done it already and we wouldn't be talking about this today.
Right.
Cyber resilience starts up front. It starts with the InfoSec, the SecOps team. It's protecting that perimeter. It's protecting the interior of the network. It applies things such as zero trust. It makes sure that you're doing the education of your employees, the folks that are actually in the system on a daily basis, to know right from wrong. But then, once the bad actors get a foothold and they are able to avoid detection and evade defenses, at that point, your next layer of defense becomes data protection. And it's protecting the data where it lives as well as what it lives on so that you can ensure data survives. The bad actors, they're out there, they're stealing data, they're deleting data, they're corrupting data, but you need to ensure data survivability. But should the worst happen and it be a destructive attack, you need a way to access data. You need to have data available so you can begin a recovery or a restoral process. And that's where cyber recovery comes in. It provides that isolated, physically and logically separated environment where data is available. And that's ultimately what we're talking about there is shrinking the amount of potential downtime to the organization.
So some of those specific strategies then for data protection and the data survivability, I think that's maybe a term that isn't as much discussed, but it's, when you're in the middle of a really bad situation, that's the thing that's gnawing at your stomach and going, are we going to even get this stuff back? Is it even still there? Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so data protection, data survivability through data protection. It's our traditional, if you look at best practices, 3-2-1, 3 copies of data, 2 different types of media, one of those being offsite, and that's for traditional disaster recovery. But there are things that you can do to not only harden what that data lives on through things like multi-factor authentication and restricted bash access to the OS and some of the things that we do, but you can also harden the data itself, creating that write once, read many, or worm copy of data so it cannot be changed, altered, or deleted regardless of credential level. So that ensures the survivability of that data.
So going back to looking at the cybersecurity process, Can you talk about the difference between cyber recovery and disaster recovery?
Sure. Disaster recovery, as I like to say, you create a run book. You usually have a secondary site. You lose physical access to site A, and you need to spin up at site B. And it's the same process over and over and over again. It's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, rinse and repeat. And you're traditionally looking for relatively fast recovery time objectives. And it's all driven by a run book. And the run book has, okay, we do all these steps in this order. Every application has inflows and outflows. With cyber recovery, number one, you don't know what you're actually walking into until you actually experience it. So there is going to be a certain level of variability there. The second piece, though, is you are going to have a lot more hands and a lot more eyes involved in the process. One of the things I say quite often is cyber affects everybody. It is an all hands on deck experience. And you're not only going to have the folks that would normally stand up a DR type situation, but you're going to have folks from executive and legal and PR and HR and risk and compliance and all the others combined, all doing different things simultaneously to get yourself back up and running. But like I said before, it comes down to having data available in order to execute that recovery. So rather than having that additional copy at a secondary site, you've got an offline copy. Some folks will call it air gap. And I've actually stayed away from that term recently because everybody likes to use it. The problem is nobody means the same thing when they say it.
What are the variations then?
Yeah, exactly. Focusing on the fact that it's isolated, it's physically and logically separated, that creates that offline copy within the vault that you need in order to recover, not just survive, but recover in the event of a cyber attack.
Okay. Well, so, we look at the vulnerability of your data, the education of your employees to understand that they often are the weakest link in terms of your risk of being in this situation. You do a lot of those first steps, but when you look at determining your level of risk, what are some of those questions, that cybersecurity teams and security professionals should be asking themselves?
No, it's a great question, and I get that one quite often. And to be honest, the definition of risk for an organization needs to come from the organization itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that is determined by technology. I always say when folks are going around and asking everybody, well, what's your most important application? Well, of course, they're going to say everything.
Yeah.
And then you end up creating some paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
That decision by the business, by the organization itself, is driven in whole by regulatory. Any regulation or standards that they must meet or exceed, obviously. I mean, there's a plethora of them within the defense contractor industry. There's CMMC. There's obviously NIST 800-. Feel free to pick a number, and it's probably got a standard to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of others. So not only does it count on that, and then we also need to look at, by the way, some things that are coming down the pipe, some things that are we got to look a little bit forward. SEC is now coming out with enhanced regulatory requirements. And then if you've got financial, if you've got PII, if you've got HIPAA information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a big leading indicator. And then above and beyond that, okay, from an organization standpoint, what is the risk we're willing to tolerate, I guess, if the event were to happen? Should the worst case scenario happen? Are we looking at a 3-day, a 5-day, a 10-day, a 2-week? I mean, according to IBM Cost of a Data Breach 2022 that's put together by Ponyman Institute, the average recovery and containment period after an event is 70 days, 7-0.
Wow.
I don't know too many organizations that can survive that one. So the goal of cyber recovery is to reduce that potentially weeks or months type endeavor down to a matter of days.
70 days is a pretty daunting number when you look at, basically, if you can imagine the worst possible scenario and you're in that for that period of time. We know some of the stats of how fatal that can be to businesses. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about what Dell can do then. So if you, as a organization, you're implementing zero trust policies, you are doing your best for education, you're trying to have all of these best practices, how can Dell help you then?
Yeah. So, Dell is in a very unique position as a solution provider, as an OEM, as somebody that, obviously we are our own organization as well. And, we need to make sure that we have a secure supply chain. I think, comparatively speaking, Dell has done very, very well over the last couple of years with all the challenges that have existed out there in the marketplace. But we also develop software. So we need to make sure that we've got that secure development lifecycle. We have endpoints, workstations, laptops. We need to ensure that we include security components not only above but below the BIOS. We have our trusted infrastructure. We have network. We have storage. We have servers. We have hyperconverged, ensuring that we're delivering the security tools that our customers need, as well as the knowledge and understanding from best practices and things along those lines. We've got our data protection, something that we've been doing for many a year, and that's protecting the data where it lives and what it lives on, regardless of where it lives. And keep in mind, that goes through trusted infrastructure as well. We live in a hybrid world. We've got public cloud. We've got software as a service, infrastructure, platform, on-prem data centers, which I would make the argument are still a cloud. We have all of those, and we need to have some uniformity and some streamlining of those operations. We can't operate in those silos. But then you've got the cyber recovery, and take it even a step further from that, the incident response and recovery, which those are the folks that come in should the worst happen, and they're the ones that add the order to the chaos. They kind of quarterback the whole situation, and we then can take the lessons learned, because all cyber attacks are variable. There's no two attacks that are identical. We take the lessons learned, and not only can we put that back into our own processes as an organization, but we can also help enrich and deliver better solutions for our customers. And that's led to what's going to happen later this year, which is our Zero Trust Center of Excellence that we're opening up within the same facility as U.S. Cyber Command. And we're actually going to be able to put solutions together for our customers and test them against the Department of Defense Zero Trust framework to ensure that we're delivering what we say we deliver and what the client expects to be delivered.
That's pretty significant. If someone isn't familiar with, they probably know a center of excellence, and that can have a varying meaning. But when you talk about a Zero Trust Center of Excellence in this facility, what does that mean?
So what that ultimately means is zero trust. Again, it's not just one thing, two thing, three thing. It's everything working together.
Yeah.
Some of the things that have been fighting against zero trust here over the last several years is a lot of fragmentation, a lot of point products, things along those lines. No cohesivity, no truly working together, and then having those APIs that are delivering the necessary information to our InfoSec teams. What this Center of Excellence allows us to do is we can actually build these solutions for our customers, as well as be able to offer them out, as a potentially as even as a single SKU, where, okay, I need an environment that looks like this, and here you go. We've already trusted it. We've already validated it. We know exactly what's going on with it. And it's delivering that promise of zero trust rather than just an individual piece or part that will add to your ability to achieve zero trust. It is a solution that truly delivers zero trust.
And what's the time frame for the COE to come on?
Time frame is sometime here in the next couple of months.
Excellent.
So it will be the first half of this year, definitely.
Excellent. I wonder if you can give us any case studies or any white paper examples of companies that have faced some of these issues. And we obviously don't want to use any names, but just a look at the challenges that a company faced, what type of scenario they're up against, and then how they're able to use some of these solutions to help them get back on track a lot faster than that 70-day average.
Yeah, no, that's always a great question. The one thing I tell, everybody's like, oh, I need a reference. The first rule of cyber recovery is you don't talk about cyber recovery.
Yeah.
It is something that is kept pretty secret within organizations. So we are fortunate. We have had several organizations go on the record. They're out there on our public-facing website that you can read about different stories and why they did and what they did, and financial and healthcare and school districts and cities and states. One in particular, we were actually doing the implementation itself, and they had been the victim of a ransomware attack some years earlier.
Uh-huh.
And we put the solution in place, and literally as we put the solution in place, they get hit again.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then rather than having to go in and in essence rebuild the core of the environment so that they could get to their traditionally immutable data, their data protection, we had that isolated copy. We had just started doing that. And literally they were able to get back up and running in a matter of hours versus days or weeks or months, just
Right.
because the two main variables anytime you talk about recovery is going to be, number one, how bad was the attack?
Mhm.
But number two, how well do you execute on your plan? And those are going to be the two biggest factors of any recovery time.
So looking at a little bit more of a big picture. So, I mean, we are obviously cyber attacks, bad actors have proliferated in the past few years. They're not going away. It's not exactly an unprofitable enterprise for those agencies. Very sophisticated companies that are working on basically getting in. So when we look at what type of world are we going to be in by February 2024? I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. I mean, it kind of loops into the standard question that we always ask our guests at the end, and that's, where do you see technology going in the next year? So where do you see us within cyber resilience by this time next year?
Oh, that's a good one.
Crystal ball, right?
Yeah, right. I wish I had one. Ideally, some of the things that I look at, because I get a lot of information passed to me. And, there's a lot of conversation around quantum, and it's in its early years. But then you see AI with the, Chat GPT and Google's answer to that and things along those lines, and what folks are able to do with that. What I see utilizing the next generation of tools, even being the early adopters of those next generation of tools, that attacks will continue to get more and more and more sophisticated. We're already seeing it. If you take a look at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they're binding operational directives. Again, they're looking back. Hindsight's always 2020, but they're seeing some of the attacks that are now doing config changes and things along those lines, rather than attacking the data itself.
Gotcha.
You can see the vulnerabilities that are released on a weekly basis, and then those that are elevated to the known exploited vulnerability catalog that CISA maintains. Having an understanding of those attacks, but this will continue to be an evolving process. It will continue to be a cat and mouse game. We give a lot of information out to the bad actors. They can then take that information, modify what they're doing for that next strain, that next signature, that next definition, that next 0 day, to try to stay one step ahead, half a step ahead even, to try to get in. But I see the evolution of between quantum and AI really playing a big role, because these are tools they're great tools. Mm-hmm. They can be used for so many good things, but they can also be used for bad things.
Right. Well, there's the Fight Club analogy then. It's, if you want to use a health term, a virus literally is always, evolving, changing. And if we're basically giving this virus basically the DNA code, the map to who we are and how to attack us, it makes sense then that we have to stay on top of things, and it's not easy.
Yeah, literally cyber resilience needs to, just like disaster recovery and backup and everything else, it needs to become part of the DNA of the organization. It needs to start with the change management process and work its way all the way through that. That's the only real way that you're going to reduce that attack surface as much as humanly possible. You're never going to be 100%, no matter what you throw at it.
Right.
But by putting in the right tools, by putting in the right procedures and processes and doing things the right way and simplifying the environment. It is an architecture. It's not just a product.
Yeah.
Those are going to play a meaningful role in combating things moving forward.
Excellent. Well, for our listeners who have any questions about something that we talked about today, or want to find out more, how can they reach out?
Feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or Twitter at JProctor. It's JProctor on both, but feel free to shoot me an email directly if you would like, jason.proctor@dell.com. And I believe you've got a separate email address as well to be able to give them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do have a dedicated Ingram Micro Dell Federal team, and that email address is dellemcfederal@ingrammicro.com. Well, Jason, I appreciate all of the time and insight today. Thanks so much for joining me.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. Great conversation.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. If you like this episode or have a question, please join the discussion on Twitter with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Until next time, I'm Shelby Skrhak.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk by Ingram Micro. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro Xvantage. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production between Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. To listen to this episode and many others, visit ingrammicro.com.